Tonight, the Scottish Government declares a housing emergency. Tens of thousands can't afford a home to rent or buy, or are living in damp, dilapidated and emergency accommodation.
Nobody's listened to us.
I just want a nice, warm, comfy house.
I've left the house once this year, on the 6th of January.
Also making the headlines, a crisis in nursing. NHS staff are leaving the profession and warning about inadequate patient care.
More Avenues projects are planned for Glasgow as the council says it'll learn lessons from its mistakes.
And it's a huge night in the Premiership here at Rugby Park. Celtic can be crowned champions when they face Kilmarnock.
And remembering Supergran as Gudrun Ure dies at the age of 98. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Scotland is in a nationwide housing emergency. The declaration from the Scottish Parliament comes after 5 local authorities, including Glasgow and Edinburgh, had already declared housing emergencies in recent months. The Scottish Government has cut almost £200 million from the housing budget.
Labour piled on pressure on the issue, and in the past 15 minutes, MSPs backed their motion at Holyrood. Campaigners say the crisis in housing took decades to get into, with a lack of council and social properties being built. They fear it could also take decades to put things right. Vanessa Taff reports.
With it in the back of my cupboard there, it's all black mould. How to put this, nobody's listened to us.
I managed to find this place that was like just about within affordable for me.
I feel like I'm living in a bath. It's a constant, it feels wet, it feels damp, it's soul destroying. I just want a nice, warm, comfy house.
I've left the house once this year, on the 6th of January.
These are the faces of Scotland's housing emergency. They're living in expensive, damp or unsuitable properties. Some can't even get a home to live in. And there are 250,000 people on waiting lists for a social house.
I call on Shirley Ann Somerville.
And today, finally, this acknowledgement from the Scottish Government.
It's very important that we move past debating how we define a problem and move on to the solutions. That's why I am very happy that we do so today and that we all collectively declare that there is a housing emergency.
The first step in this has to be taking responsibility for the fact that there are 10,000 children in temporary accommodation, that not enough homes are being built, that far too many homes are lying empty, and to start to come up with solutions for that.
It's been over a year since the Scottish Government appointed a housing minister dedicated to tackling the problem. But in that time, 5 local authorities, most recently here in West Dunbartonshire, declared their own housing emergency. Despite the Scottish Government acknowledging the scale of the problem, there are concerns that words won't be enough. There now needs to be urgent action.
Action means money, and the starting point for Shelter Scotland will be reversing the devastating 26% cut that the Scottish Government made to the Affordable Housing Supply Programme. Now, we know the Scottish Government faced a really tight financial situation when they set that budget, but a 4% cut in their budget, their capital budget from Westminster, didn't need to mean there was a 26% cut to the housing budget.
Finding an affordable home to rent has been 10 years in the making for Valerie.
It's been a long time. My points on the council system was very low. So I was never going to get, I didn't have any priority anywhere. And I felt I was getting nowhere. I go out and work every day. I try really hard. I've looked for flats. I've been for private viewings.
For those like Valerie, this development is a lifeline. They offer mid-market homes, allowing people to live in their community at a cost that won't break the bank.
2-bed rents here are £802 a month. The average in Edinburgh for a 2-bed is £1,400. The average for the EH3 postcode, which this is just over £1,700. So quite a significant saving on people's bills.
The government say they're committed to delivering over 1,100 affordable homes by 2032, but with millions cut from the budget, for those suffering from this crisis, that target feels a long way off. Vanessa Taff, STV News.
A mother whose repeated pleas for a rehab place were rejected is urging MSPs to get behind a proposed law which would ensure that those at death's door from addiction can access the treatments they need.
The Scottish Conservatives believe their Right to Recovery bill could be transformative. If passed, the legislation would give anyone diagnosed with drug or alcohol dependency the right to residential rehabilitation within weeks. Here's our chief reporter, Sian Frew.
At most recovery meetings, whether the issue is drugs or alcohol, a common experience shared is the desperate attempt to find a place in residential rehab.
I would be in blackouts for a month and no knowing what's going on, and then I begged for rehab. I've had different workers, never got it. They says I wasn't bad enough. My other addiction workers would argue with them and say, well, how bad does she need to be for you to actually see that she's going to die?
Those behind the Right to Recovery bill outlined the proposals they say would cut through a broken treatment system.
I've represented people who have been involved with services for 2 decades who don't know that residential treatment was ever an option for them. Some of the simplest things that people would believe that are already in place aren't getting followed up with, and enshrining it in law would help to hold some of the organisations to account.
It's basic ethics here. You know, we currently don't provide services in Scotland that help people get well. We only provide services that try to minimise harm.
Over 3/4 of those who responded to a consultation on the bill, including charities and frontline groups, were supportive of its aims. Others believe legislation is not necessary, but do want to see more resources and a combination of services. The Scottish Conservatives estimate the bill would require additional funding of up to £38 million.
Dame Carol Black did a study for NHS England that said every £1 we spend in additional treatment for drug and alcohol rehabilitation actually saves £4 in other public services across Scotland. So not only can this save lives, can it help people, can it stop families having to go through that horror of losing a loved one, it can actually save money in the long run as well.
The Scottish Government say it's spending an extra £50 million a year to improve and expand drug treatments and other services. It also claims it's on target to deliver at least 650 rehab beds and 1,000 funded places annually by 2026.
We're already up over 30%. I'm meeting Public Health Scotland this afternoon for a further update. But I think the information that I'm seeing, and when I'm out visiting resi rehab establishments who have already increased their capacity, we're well on target to meet that 650 places.
The Scottish Government say it will take time to consider these proposals, but the bill already looks like it will receive majority support. Sharon Frew, STV News.
Scotland's councils are facing a £600 million funding shortfall, and spending watchdogs are warning that budget gap could increase. Our political editor Colin Mackay has been looking at the report, and Colin, it's all mounting up for the new First Minister.
Do you know, it's felt like a day of crises and emergencies here. The Holyrood's Education Committee reported problems with additional support needs in schools. The Trussell Trust reported a big increase in families with children relying on food banks. You've already heard about the housing emergency and the drugs crisis, and we've heard before about that council funding crisis. Today's report coming from the Accounts Commission. All this, and it's just a week since John Swinney became First Minister.
We have to face these realities that austerity is now paying a significant price within our public services. Now, the Scottish Government last year gave local authorities a 2.5% real terms increase in their budget. So we inflation-proofed the budgets and gave more. So we're providing as much support to local authorities as we can, but I recognise the challenges that local authorities face.
Now, John Swinney's been meeting COSLA leaders this afternoon. They were due to make a pay offer to unions this week. There is a letter which has gone to the unions tonight. It's not a formal offer, but it basically talks about 2%, although they hope to increase that at a meeting next Wednesday. Unite is already, though, preparing to ballot for strike action for the 3rd year in a row. Unison will meet tomorrow, but they say that the problems facing councils are mostly down to money.
We're at a point where we can't cut much more. Even when we're talking about statutory services which we have to provide, we're at a point where we're even closing schools. We're talking about pupil transport being cut back, so we're at that kind of level.
There's been a lot going on here today on that housing emergency. The Scottish Housing Federation say the words need to be backed with action. For action, read money. You can tackle most of these crises and emergencies if you just throw money at them, but money is something that John Swinney, as First Minister, doesn't have much of. But before the summer, I'm told that he looks likely to announce some big changes, making some tough choices, scrapping some projects to move money around a bit. Priorities and budgets being rebalanced by the new First Minister.
A lot going on indeed. OK, Colin, thanks very much for that.
It's been revealed that the UK government is planning for the first new nuclear power plant in Scotland in nearly 40 years, in spite of opposition from the Scottish government. Well, our Westminster correspondent Paris Goutsianis joins us. And Paris, this announcement has caused controversy.
Absolutely, John, because the SNP opposes new nuclear power and planning laws are devolved, so there's been an effective ban on any new reactors in Scotland. But at a Westminster committee, the Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack said plans are already being made for one of a new generation of what's called small modular reactors to be built in Scotland. And what really raised eyebrows was his confident prediction of why that ban won't matter after the next Scottish Parliament elections.
On the small nuclear reactors, I have asked the Energy Minister to plan for one in Scotland. Good. And because I believe in 2026 we'll see a unionist regime again in Holyrood, and then we'll move forward on that matter. Yes. So that's my view. With the timescale of what's in front of us, I don't see any point having a great fight over it.
Under the UK government's Great British Nuclear Programme, existing atomic energy sites will be prioritised for these small reactors. That includes decommissioned sites like Hunterston and Dounreay in Scotland. They're supposed to be quicker and cheaper to build and provide clean, consistent energy when the wind doesn't blow. The plans have Labour's backing, but the SNP and the Greens say this announcement undermines Scottish democracy, and they say Scotland doesn't need nuclear power, it just needs more focus on renewables. And, you know, regardless of what you heard Alistair Jack say just then, I think he and the Tories would be quite happy to have this fight. As one UK government source told me, it's called Great British Nuclear for a reason.
Paris at Westminster, thank you. Scotland's nurses are stuck in a vicious cycle of not being able to provide adequate patient care due to unsafe staffing levels. The Royal College of Nursing is calling on the Scottish Government to do more to stop workers leaving the profession.
The Health Secretary says nurses here are the highest paid in the UK and students have access to a £10,000 bursary. Here's our political reporter Laura Alderman.
Lou is set to graduate as a qualified nurse in a few months' time. She's excited to start, but is already feeling the pressures engulfing the sector.
Placements I've been on have been generally very supportive of me and wanting to help train me and look out for me and help me mould me into the best nurse that I can be in the future. They haven't got time. There's issues with short staffing and people are not able to provide safe and effective patient care, let alone look after the student nurses that are there.
And have you seen students on your course drop out already?
There's a huge attrition rate. I challenge anyone really to survive on £769 a month because that's what we're asked to do. And unless you're working on top of that, which means that you're doing 40 hours a week placement and then on top of that having to do extra bank shifts, find other work, then it's not safe.
She was sharing her experiences with other nurses and politicians in Edinburgh today. The Royal College of Nursing is urging the Scottish Government to find a way not only to recruit more staff, but crucially to keep them in the job. There's currently nearly 4,000 nursing vacancies in Scotland. June has been a nurse for almost 40 years.
Does it feel like the sector is in a crisis at the moment?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I think I've maybe felt this way for, say, the last 10 years. The stress you see on the nurses, you know, from a day to day, and it's just based on this, you're trained to want to provide optimal care, and when you can't achieve it, it's not just demoralising, it's just not fair on the patients and their relatives.
We're committed to coming forward with that workforce strategy. We'll work with the Nursing and Midwifery Task Force in the particular areas of concern that they have and the ideas that will come through that to ensure that we continue to see a good supply of new nurses and midwives coming through.
Putting in place the strategy is great, that's a first move, but it's the delivery and the implementation that matter. And the reality is we are 4,000 nurses short. You know, you cannot run a safe, effective service if you're already short-staffed.
As demand on the NHS grows, nurses say the workforce must too, or else risk their well-being and patient safety. Laura Alderman, STV News.
Other stories in the West, and police say one officer was bitten on the arm, 6 others injured, and 4 arrests were made when pro-Palestinian protesters clashed with the force outside a military electronics factory in Govan this morning. Dozens gathered outside the Talis site, demanding an immediate ceasefire and an end to the war in Gaza. Police say they finished their search of a Glasgow funeral parlour, which is at the centre of investigations into missing cremated remains and financial misconduct. Officers have been at A Milne Independent Funeral Directors for a fortnight and say inquiries to establish any criminality are ongoing and the investigation is complex. Lessons will be learned. That's the message from Glasgow City Council as it enters the next stage of its multi-million-pound Avenues project designed to transform the city. A consultation event on proposals for the Broomielaw and Clyde Street took place earlier today. Caitlin Hutchinson has been to find out more.
Glasgow City Centre's £115 million makeover is well underway. But as attention turns to the next stage of the project at the Broomielaw and Clyde Street, the public are getting the chance to air their concerns.
The Clyde is the pride of Glasgow. I just find the consultation is a little confusing. You know, cycling, pedestrians, and cruise vehicles, they all need a place, and it's just confusing to figure out where everyone will go.
Has the lesson of Sucky Street not been enough for Glasgow City Council? The Great Wall of China was built quicker than the Sucky Street project, and that's only the first part.
Well, there are so many issues in the city, the graffiti, the potholes. I think the priority should be the immediate needs.
It's not been a smooth road for the Avenues project. There have been lengthy delays up at Cambridge Street and the Socky Hall precinct due to construction issues. And locals there have complained that the site has been left looking like a bomb site for far too long. However, the council says that it's now fixed those issues and that construction will finish by the end of this year. And it says moving forward in other parts of the city, like here at the Broomielaw, it won't repeat the same mistakes.
No doubt there was a few hiccups in the beginning, not something that any of us were pleased with. Definitely things that were avoidable and could and should have been done better. There was issues with underground services that weren't on the maps, and with a city as old as Glasgow that has had constant redevelopment, unfortunately that can happen. Making our streets and our avenues a more attractive place for people to spend time and spend money in will help attract new investment to the city, new business, support the existing businesses and bring more people to live in the city.
While the work by the river isn't set to begin until 2026, this week saw the first steps towards the £5 million redevelopment of Argyle Street West Avenue, including the creation of new rain gardens, cycle lanes and tree-lined footpaths. It's designed specifically to make the city greener, more accessible and to help with issues like flooding.
It's seeking to be a transformational project. We're looking at 17 or 18 sites across the city centre. And the Broomielaw is certainly one of the longest sites. Better places to walk, better places to cycle, and then the green infrastructure adds to the kind of welcoming environment that we're trying to create.
An online consultation is running until the 14th of June. Caitlin Hutchison, STV News in Glasgow.
To sport, and Rahman is at Rugby Park on a huge night in the Premiership.
Thanks very much, John. A very good evening from Rugby Park, where Kilmarnock face Celtic. 285 days after the Premiership season kicked off, Celtic have the chance to be crowned champions. A draw against Killie here tonight will secure them their third successive league title. Well, Brendan Rodgers' side come into tonight's match full of confidence after defeating Rangers at the weekend. And the Parkhead boss says he wants his players to sprint past the finishing line. As for Kilmarnock, they've already defeated Celtic twice here this season, and Derek McInnes's team secured a Europa League spot for next season after their win over St Mirren at the weekend.
It's the place I know where Celtic has won the league 4 times, out with Celtic Park, so our aim is to make it 5, and if we can do that, then we'll all be really happy. But at the very moment, I'm just concentrating on a really tough game against a really well organised coach team.
Obviously, they've got a
lot to play for tomorrow, but as so do we. We want to go to that game. We want to kind of ruin their chances of winning the league here. We don't want that. We've beaten them here before, twice this season, so we'll be looking to do that again. It's an important game for us. It's our last home game to kind of show the fans the kind of season we've had, and we'll be going into it with full intentions to try win the game.
Well, Rangers delayed Celtic's title party after defeating Dundee last night, but Philippe Clement admits he's disappointed. He had to have a stern word with his players at half-time. Clement's side were 2 goals down after 40 minutes. Ross McCausland reduced the deficit by 1 just before the break. In the second half, the hosts responded by scoring 4 goals to secure a 5-2 victory.
Second half, then you see what they can do if they are focused on both things. But I cannot make myself angry every halftime or before every game. That's impossible. It needs to come out of the team, and they need to understand that and take lessons out of this. This is the perfect example today. Boots off the pitch at halftime, and a lot of applause after the game because people enjoyed how they saw the team play.
Well, Dundee's defeat last night means St Mirren have secured 5th spot and European football next season. Well, today the Buddies announced the signing of versatile defender Sean Rooney on a 2-year deal. They're at home to Hearts this evening.
We want to go out on a nice high on the last home game of the season. It's a brilliant game against the Hearts side, who've done tremendously well this year, and absolute massive credit to Stephen Naismith. I think he's had a fantastic season and done very, very well with Hearts. So it'll be a test for us, and one that we're again looking forward to. We want to end the season on a high.
Well, there are 5 games in the Premiership tonight. There they are at Easter Road after Nick Montgomery was sacked last night. Hibs face Motherwell. Livingston are away to Aberdeen, and there's a big one in Perth as St Johnstone take on Ross County. Now, in other football news, Willie Collum has been appointed head of referees at the SFA. Collum, who has been a referee for almost 30 years, succeeds Crawford Allen, who leaves the role at the end of the season. And the SFA has also confirmed tonight that Nick Walsh, the referee, will take charge of the Scottish Cup final between Celtic and Rangers at Hampden on May the 25th. But as for tonight, it's all about Kilmarnock against Celtic here at Rugby Park. And Celtic fans are certainly hoping tonight's the night they are crowned champions.
All right, thanks very much, Rahman. OK, let's get the weather now from Sean.
Light winds rolling in from the west. We'll be joined by some very welcomed ice creams. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Very good evening to you across the Highlands today. There's been plenty of blue skies and feeling lovely in that sunshine with highs into low 20s. Here it's still been warm, but we've had a bit more cloud around thanks to this weather front that's just lingering over the top of us, producing a few scattered showers. It continues to do that through this evening, but again, those temperatures staying roughly where they've been for the last several nights, 12, 13 degrees Celsius. So that little weather front moving its way eastwards, then coming back westwards. This is just moving back and forward over the next couple of days. So expect tomorrow we start off with a lot of cloud. There will be a few showers, mainly across lights of Stirlingshire, running into northern parts of Argyll and then into lights of Fort William, Lochaber and also around Mull. But hopefully in the afternoon it should be largely dry and light today, broken cloud. Temperatures up to 19 or 20 degrees, so still feeling warm in those sunny spells. Now the weather's looking pretty decent towards the end of the week. We're going to see pressure building from the west. Friday though, I think will be quite a showery day, and some of those showers could be on the heavy side. But look at our temperatures, we're still about 19 to 21 degrees Celsius, so still warm in the sunny spells, but it's that sunshine that could just bubble up a few bigger clouds and get us those heavy showers. But hopefully as pressure builds Saturday and especially into Sunday, there'll be a lot of dry weather with sunny spells. Temperatures still nudging into low 20s on Saturday, so feeling very nice in the sunshine. Then on Sunday, a lot of dry weather with sunshine, but the temperature's more like the mid to high teens.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And finally, the Scottish actress Gudrun Ewer has died at the age of 98.
Gudrun enjoyed roles on stage, radio, film and TV, but was perhaps best known for playing Super Gran in the 1980s. Laura Boyd has been taking a look back at her life.
Stand back Superman, Iceman, Spider-Man. Super Gran was a Scottish superhero who was watched by children around the world.
Aha!
Perfectly portrayed by actress Gudrun Ure.
I knew you, Rupert, when you were just a wee bit lad.
Me?
Nicking sweeties for the tuck shop.
Born in Milton of Campsie in 1926, Gudrun first caught the acting bug in theatre, but it was at the age of 59 she pulled on her bonnet to become the stunt superhero granny that everybody loved.
I didn't recognise what was going on at the time. It was just a job like any other job. I was blessed by the fact that it was a children's programme and the children were absolutely lovely. They really, really were lovely. And I didn't mean thousands of them, I suppose. There were an awful lot of children.
Hang about, look out for Super Gran.
With an iconic theme tune written by Billy Connolly, the Emmy-winning show ran from 1985 till 1987, with a host of famous faces appearing, including one or two worth shouting about, like Lulu.
Look out! It's Super
Gudrun went on to appear in the likes of Casualty and The Crow Road, but after her niece announced she had died at home in London yesterday, aged 98, it's as the nation's favourite super gran she will remain in many a heart.
Ta-da!
Gudrun, your Super Gran was a bit after my time. I suppose you're going to tell me that you watched it when you were at school.
I sure did, John, I sure did. But I also watched you after school.
So I was an inspiration to you, Kelly. I'm glad to hear that. That's excellent.
You believe that, John. You believe that.
Good night.
Good night.